Drew Barrymore, part one. Buckle the fuck up. So Drew Barrymore comes from what's called the first family of acting. They were the most famous family and actors of like the 30s and 40s, the most famous being her grandfather, but also famously everybody in her family fell ill to alcoholism. Her grandfather, John Barrymore, became an alcoholic at 14. His most famous role is Hamlet, but he did a bunch of Shakespearean stuff like Romeo and Juliet, etc., 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 etc. But he's called the best actor of his time. He also did Moby Dick, which is about a whale. He marries Dolores Costello, who's also a huge star, and in 1942, they have John Barrymore Jr., who is Drew Barrymore's father. This is him. He's giving me some Clint Eastwood vibes, but it's not. It's John. In 1972, he meets Jade, J-A-I-D. They become pregnant with Drew, and Jade realizes that the person she fell in love with, this like charismatic light, is now very abusive to her and becoming increasingly violent. He essentially abandons Jade and Drew before Drew's even born. Jade says that she realizes that Drew, her daughter, seems to light up whenever there's a camera around. So she's like, oh my God, we got some natural talent in this house. Drew does her first job ever at 11 months old, doing a puppy food commercial. And fun fact, the puppy on set actually nipped Drew. Very rude. But actually, it's quoted that like Drew remained professional at 11 months old. I was watching an interview where Drew, or maybe a friend of Drew's, said that at a young age, Drew was left alone a lot. When her mom wasn't pursuing acting herself and playing small roles, she was waitressing. But Drew very early on realized that when she's working, her and her mom get to be together a lot. So not only did she have the acting bug, but she became kind of codependent on working, and she kind of saw that as quality time. So Drew continues working. She gets a couple commercials, good for you. And then she has a small role in this movie called Altered States. And then Steven Spielberg is looking for a little girl to play a role in a movie called Poltergeist. And I love that movie. If you know that movie, I want you to know that that kitchen scene with the seats, terrifying. Anyway, they go for another girl. Tragic story about that girl too, that little girl. She died when she was like 11 from intestinal blockage. Anyway, he's like, I have a small passion project on the side called E.T., but I need a little girl to be sassier than the girl in Poltergeist. Drew Barrymore part 2. So Steven Spielberg, right? He's like, okay, listen, Poltergeist, I need a sweet little dumpling of a girl. And he gets her, right? But he's like, listen, for my passion project, E.T., I need a little bit of a sassier character. Okay? And she's like, I can do that. And she's a quick, if you watch interviews for when she's like 4 or 5 years old, she's quick. Here, I'll show you.
To meet you. Nice to meet you too. I've been waiting all my life to meet you, and
That's a cute little girl, okay? And me, if I was on a talk show at 4 or 5 years old and they asked me a question, I'd be like, 1000%. So Steven Spielberg is like, okay, listen, the role's yours, but one last thing. Can you scream? Because he needed a little girl to scream in that one scene in E.T. So E.T. finally comes out and she's the star, okay? Elliot, super cute. Have you seen E.T.? Come on. You want to ruin your week? Go watch E.T. That movie? Everyone knows my favorite thing is when I feel sick. I tell people I look like E.T. face down in the creek, but around this time, Jade, her mom, decides, okay, I'm going to be her manager. All right. However, people are like, is Jade living vicariously through Drew? You know, which is T-O-A-O-T. Tale as old as time, right? We've heard that a million times. It always happens. So guess what happens in school? Classic. Another T-O-A-O-T. She's bullied. Because kids are cruel, but more than cruel, they're jealous. Especially after she's the youngest host in SNL history. And she's funny. Then at 7, Drew does a movie called Irreconcilable Differences. I don't know why that's so hard for me. Irreconcilable Differences. But also at this time, her dad starts coming around and is like, I know you got cash. you keep getting roles. And he just did ET. I know you got cash. He'd show up, beat the shit out of Jade and Drew. Horrible. And my heart really goes out to Drew because her life becomes so turbulent. And I can't even blame her because we feel as kids that, you're taught your parents are born to love you. So what does it mean when the people who are meant to love you the most only use you? How is this kid supposed to absorb what love is if the way she learned how to love people is to entertain them and let them use you? So at some point at 7 years old, she tells her dad to get lost and he disappears. Part 3, Drew Barrymore. So after this, Drew Barrymore does a movie called Firestarter, which doesn't go crazy in the box office, but is now kind of seen as a cult classic, kind of like Lost Boys. If you haven't seen Lost Boys, pause, and I'll see you later. That's a good one. So she's still getting bullied at school, and the producers stop calling because she's no longer this teeny tiny cute toddler star. You know what I mean? She's growing up a little bit. So, in Drew's own words, she finds community in the club. I don't know if that's verbatim, but basically she was like, so I started to party. 6 or 7? Yeah.
So you started drinking at 9 to prove a point or to feel good or to get drunk or what?
Well, I didn't really know. I mean, when I was 8, I had 2 glasses of champagne, and boom, I was tipsy and, bubbly, the life of the party. And I felt so good. All my problems had seemed, to disappear for that hour.
It's nuts because, for me and my friends, we talk about the freedom of tipsiness, you know what I'm talking about, as adults. But this is like an 8, 9-year-old girl. And I know what you're thinking. Who the hell is letting in Drew Barrymore at 8 or 9 years old into these parties, these bars, these clubs? People would let her in because they thought it was great PR. Today? Are you kidding me? Absolutely not. But back then they're like, oh my God, a Barrymore in the club? Perfect. Listen to what her mom says in this clip.
Where were you when she was going to parties and bars at 9?
I was never with her at bars at 9, but I would go with her to parties. There were a lot of industry functions and then private social/business functions. And when we got there, we would stay together for time, then she would go her way and I would go my way.
What do you mean you guys would go your separate ways? What do you mean? What? What do you mean? You know what? The 80s were a crazy time. Everything I hear about the 80s, I'm like, that's not for me. That's not for anybody. That's not for Drew. I'm 31, okay? This girl at 9 years old getting tipsy, I'm 31. And my mom will still come up to me and she's like, so we're drinking tonight, huh? I'm like, it's New Year's. You know what I mean? So at 9 years, are you joking? Actually, at the rap party for Firestarter, when she was 9, is when she first started smoking weed. I can say that, right? She started smoking jazz lettuce. Yeah. It was actually at that party where she got so drunk that she woke up in a bedroom alone. Part 3, Drew Barrymore. So after this, Drew Barrymore does a movie called Firestarter, which doesn't go crazy in the box office, but is now kind of seen as a cult classic, kind of like Lost Boys. If you haven't seen Lost Boys, pause, and I'll see you later. That's a good one. So she's still getting bullied at school, and the producers stop calling because she's no longer this teeny tiny cute toddler star. You know what I mean? She's growing up a little bit. So, in Drew's own words, she finds community in the club. I don't know if that's verbatim, but basically she was like, so I started to party. 6 or 7? Yeah.
So you started drinking at 9 to prove a point or to feel good or to get drunk or what?
Well, I didn't really know. I mean, when I was 8, I had 2 glasses of champagne, and boom, I was tipsy and, bubbly, the life of the party. And I felt so good. All my problems had seemed, to disappear for that hour.
It's nuts because, for me And my friends, we talk about the freedom of tipsiness, you know what I'm talking about, as adults. But this is like an 8, 9-year-old girl. And I know what you're thinking. Who the hell is letting in Drew Barrymore at 8 or 9 years old into these parties, these bars, these clubs? People would let her in because they thought it was great PR. Today? Are you kidding me? Absolutely not. But back then they're like, oh my God, a Barrymore in the club? Perfect. Listen to what her mom says in this clip.
Where were you when she was going to parties and bars at 9?
I was never with her at bars at 9, but I would go with her to parties. There were a lot of industry functions and then private social/business functions. And when we got there, we would stay together for time, and she would go her way and I would go my way.
What do you mean you guys would go your separate ways? What do you mean? What? What do you mean? You know what? The 80s were a crazy time. Everything I hear about the 80s, I'm like, that's not for me. That's not for anybody. That's not for Drew. Like, I'm 31, okay? This girl at 9 years old getting tipsy, I'm 31. And my mom will still come up to me and she's like, so we're drinking tonight, huh? I'm like, it's New Year's. You know what I mean? So at 9 years, are you joking? Actually, at the rap party for Firestarter, when she was 9, is when she first started smoking weed. I can say that, right? She started smoking jazz lettuce. Yeah. It was actually at that party where she got so drunk that she woke up in a bedroom alone. Part 5, Drew Barrymore. There's another experience that kind of like makes me really, really uncomfortable. When she was 9 years old, she had her first slow dance. She went to Rob Lowe's 20th birthday party. I'm just letting you know right now, if I went to a birthday party of adults, 20 years old, and there's a 9-year-old, I'm thinking, oh, this party sucks. I'd be like, where's your mommy? Where's your daddy? And this party has to suck. Because if a 9-year-old is partying with us, how rock and roll can we really be? She had her first slow dance with Emilio Estevez. You know who he is because he's Martin Sheen's son, our president from The West Wing. I love The West Wing. Best writing ever. Are you kidding me? I love The West Wing. And Charlie Sheen's brother. But he was 22 years old. And I thought, as I was reading this, I'm like, oh, haha, jokey, jokey. No, it was a serious slow dance. What's wrong with... What? You went up to a 9-year-old and asked them to have this dance? Drew Barrymore has a biography. I think it's called Little Lost Girl, that she wrote many, many moons ago. And in that book, she writes about how she remembers trying to be sexy when she'd go out to these nightclubs. She says she remembers trying to lure men, and that without fault, men would approach her and her other very young friends, and they would say, do you want to dance? And she would say, yeah, if you get me and my friends drinks. And they would. Also, people talk a lot about Studio 54, like this iconic place. And I don't think people realize it was so corrupt and crazy. Like somebody died in the air ducts. It was only open for 2 years. So all these stories and all these pictures that we see of Studio 54, 24 months, babe. Like, I want you to imagine seeing this little girl in line at the club and then watching her skip you in line. My pride. So at 11 years old, Drew Barrymore has her first relationship. She's filming Babes in Toyland at the age of 11, and she starts dating a 15-year-old boy. She says that this is the first boy to ever call her beautiful, and her first makeout. So when I'm first learning about this, I'm like 11 and 15, weird, right? That's a sophomore in high school dating a 6th grader. But then I learned at the age of 11, she also dates an 18-year-old who people believe is the oldest son of Sophia Loren. Part 6, Drew Barrymore. So, according to her book, Little Girl Lost, people assume that her 18-year-old boyfriend when she was 11 is the son of Sophia Loren. My audio is acting so weird, so if this audio doesn't match my mouth, I'm so sorry. So people suspect that it's Sophia Loren's son because she describes him as one of two sons of an Italian producer and an extremely famous Italian sex symbol from the 60s. So people are like, okay, we got it. He's 18, she's 11, they're smoking weed all the time and getting so fucked up. And in the book, she says that she would get so drunk that she would get sick, and the parents seem to be like fine with it. I'm gonna blame a different era and a different culture. Doesn't make it right, still makes it weird. At 12 years old, she starts doing, how do I say this in like TikTok language? Snowflakes that make you feel happy and hyper. Yes? And at 12, she's invited to go speak at the White House with Nancy Reagan. Nancy Reagan had that like just say no drug campaign. So crazy. And you can watch the video, give it a YouTube. But Drew Barrymore, when she's talking about the pressures that kids face today with drugs and alcohol, she starts bawling at the podium, sobbing. She looks really tortured, and I want to dive into the screen and hold her to my bosom, all right? Like Madonna and Child, I want to hold her. At 12 years old, though, she's already being called a has-been. Which is crazy to me. How can you have been anything when you're 12? At 13, she goes to rehab. She's in rehab for 12 days before her team pulls her out to film a movie called Far From Home, where she's 13. It's a pretty adult movie. I mean, she's 13, and in the movie, she's making out with a 20-year-old. This is also when she is intimate with a guy for the first time. It's a guy that she met in rehab, right? And apparently, after they did premarital stuff, he like ignored her and pretended like nothing happened. And she said that this shattered her. This was like detrimental to her. This is also, I think, when she nabs her mother's credit card and flies cross country to go party in LA with one of her friends. And then she's like obviously dragged back and put in this rehab facility that was like no joke, lockdown for a year and a half. And she attributes that to like saving her life. I need you also to remember that like at this time, I know it's so hard because we know Drew Barrymore in a different way. Like my real first memories of Drew Barrymore, I'm like 10 or 11, so like 2001. But she was like the tabloid queen. Like we treated her like Lindsay Lohan. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God, the potential, a lost. Drew Barrymore part 7. So 13 is also the age where Drew Barrymore tried to harm herself for the first time. I'm only drinking water and I'm still a little burpy, my bad. But this rehab center that she goes to, I mean, you can look it up also on the YouTubers, on the Drew Barrymore show. She revisits this place and she sobs and she's like, you don't understand that this place like really set me straight. So, snaps. But the way you describe a lockdown in the book is a little worrisome to me, but that's okay. I'm glad it worked. At 14, she emancipates herself from her mother. And of course, the media is like, it's war, okay? But according to Drew and her mom, it was really civil. Like they understood. It's funny the way that they describe it though in interviews are like, we understood that we needed time away from each other. Like they were not mother and daughter. They were like, it sounded like a really codependent relationship that was not maternal and child. Does that make sense? It was more like partners. So she's an emancipated minor, right? Crazy. Her mom said that she agreed because she acknowledges they were too meshed. What a weird choice of words, right? I don't know. So she moves out to live on her own in an apartment at 14. At 15, she's engaged to a 25-year-old. To a Leyland Howard, who is like Hollywood royalty because his grandfather of the same name is a super famous Hollywood producer. That ends a few months later. And throughout all of this, she's sober. Hats off. 15, heartbreak, an engagement, sobriety, being on your own. Props. At 16, she gets the role Poison Ivy, and it's a super sexual role. She she just seduces her best friend's dad. She starts dating a guy named Jamie Walters. They get engaged, but at the age of 16, they do a nude photo shoot together. I think it's for like Interview Mag. And I understand if it's Interview Mag, if I'm remembering correctly. I know it's like Andy Warhol's magazine. It's like edgy and artsy, but like so many other things we could do with the couple, you know? I think she was actually like barely 17, but you know what? Brooke Shields, Playboy, that's another level of fucked up, you know? So it's all fucked up. But she keeps getting these like really seductive, almost manic roles. Like she plays Amy Fisher, you know, in one movie. At 17, she also gets married for the first time. Okay, part 8, Drew Barrymore. Stunner. Beautiful baby. So in 1994, I think she's 17 now, she gets married to a bartender, a Welsh bartender. They only knew each other for like a very short amount of time. They got married one random night at 5 a.m. Did I say his name? Jeremy Thomas. And this marriage only lasts like 2 months, 3 months, maybe 2 months. I'm going to give it 8 Saturdays. 51 days. And we give Kim K shit, huh? Well, she's 17. You live, you learn. When you're 17, 51 days is like a year. At 19, she poses for Playboy. So is she getting an influx of roles? No, but people do see her as this like wild child, and people love seeing these like child stars grow up to be like these sex symbols. And I think it's kind of weird because like even the font for Drew is like childlike. Like they like playing on like, you've known her as a kid. It's gross. It's weird. However, she looks great in the spread. I can't remember if she said she's ever regretted it. I hope not. But Steven Spielberg has always remained a father figure to her even to this day. So much so that some websites will report that that's her stepdad. It's not. He's more like a godfather, if you will. And when Playboy came out, when she was 19 for her 20th birthday, he gave her like a huge quilt with a note saying, cover up. Dad energy. Then at 20, she does the infamous flashing. She goes on Dave Letterman and she gets on his desk, and for like a blink of an eye, she flashes him, and it's everywhere on the news. I personally think people made too big of a deal about it, but people were like, she can't be controlled. She's crazy. You know what I mean? It was just like, which is whatever. Like I've been banned from a few bars. Doesn't matter. I personally thought it was funny and like cheeky, but at the time they were like, wild child, uncensored, uncontrollable, Drew Barrymore. Like I think Drew Barrymore has always been famous, but there is a certain gap where we don't really know a lot. I think she was still working these like one-off bad girl roles, but she wants to reinvent herself. She's bored with it. She wants to expand. She wants to be seen as more, and she knows that she loves acting. So at 25, she's not 25 here. Really, I just go for the photos I like. You know what I mean? So at 25, she does a Woody Allen movie. We'll talk about that another time. But it's called like Everyone Says I Love You. And she plays this virginal role. Part 9, Drew Barrymore. So she does this Woody Allen role, and she plays this like complete opposite of these like bad girl, like, fuck me. Sorry, but I mean like seductive roles. And she's like this virginal, like nice girl. People are not used to seeing her that way. And she sings in it, and she's really, really talented, and it catches the eyes of many directors. So soon after, why are you burping? I'm like in the middle of a story. What's wrong with you? So soon after this movie comes out, she gets Scream. Oh, I love it when iconic people are just being iconic. You know what I mean? Like, you know when you're watching stuff and you're like, I wonder if this is going to be iconic. And it is! So people see on the roster that Drew Barrymore's in it, and because they're used to her being a main character for so many years, since she was, 11 months old, they assume she's going to be in the whole movie. But if you watch Scream, you know that she's in it for, 5 minutes, and audiences were shocked, and the media couldn't stop talking about it. And all this media attention about how people wanted her to be in the movie longer got even more attention from casting directors and producers. But she's not getting the roles that she wants. So what does she do? She teams up with one of her friends, and she starts her own production company. Like boss bitches do. Like boss bitches do. You're not giving me what I want, I'm gonna make what I want happen for me. But it was a little hard at first, apparently. And sometimes boss bitches do be struggling, okay? Sometimes we do be asking for favors. And she did a lot at first with this production company, apparently. She really wanted to control the perception, her own perception. She wanted to control how people viewed her. Am I doing English? She wanted people to see her with eyes. Her friends have done interviews and they're like, if she hadn't created her own production company and was more in control of how people viewed her, they would have never known how funny she is, how dorky she is. I think people saw her as, like I said, like this bad girl, and they're like, she completely outgrew that and she was ready to take on new roles, but it was just hard to convince people. You know what I mean? So her and her friend want to produce this like movie about a wedding singer. And she's like, Adam Sandler has to do it. Adam Sandler has to do it. But by this time, Adam Sandler's already like a huge star because of SNL. And he's like unreachable. So Drew Barrymore like tracks him down and bothers him so much to the point where he's like, fine, I'll meet with you. Fine. She like broke him down. Obviously, he agrees to do the movie. She plays a super sweet character. It's a love story. And they have an amazing chemistry. It's a huge spark. I mean, have you seen the movie? I was like, I'm watching two people in love in real life. And it's a huge, huge hit for her. Huge. I mean, for me too. It's a hit. It's a hit in my life. It's a hit in my book. Part 10, Drew Barrymore. Okay, so wedding singer in the books. I would even call it a slam dunk. That's me playing basketball. 1997 comes along. And you know what movie she does? Oh, this movie, Ever After, bro. Ever After, dude. Woo! That's my motherfucking movie. And something happens. So she produced it, and this movie comes out and all of a sudden it starts turning like Drew Barrymore is becoming a role model. It's starting to turn for my girl. And people are like, holy shit, I think Drew Barrymore is about to make a serious fucking comeback. Also in the movie, to go toe to toe with Miss Angelica Houston, that's not easy to do. You can't teach that. You can't teach that. As though that's easy peasy lemon squeezy, psych as fuck. And you know what else we get that year? Is it that year? Well, that era? Josie fucking Grossi, dude. Never been fucking kissed. Iconic, legendary, must see TV. Well, it's a movie. Oh my god, Josie Grossi. Oh my god. It's about a journalist who's an adult that goes back to high school and like, would it do well today? That's not my business. That's not my business. And then we get motherfucking Charlie's Angels, dude. Sorry, I got so excited. Don't screenshot that. Respect me. Make myself smaller. Hold on, there we go. Okay, we get Charlie's Angels. I saw this motherfucker in theaters. And let me tell you, I was in there like this with them. An absolute smash, an absolute American gem. Whatever the American live is, throw that bitch in there. That movie, absolutely. The smack my bitch up fight scene? What's wrong with you? Art. 200 million in the bank. Well, not in the bank. Box office. Out of this world success. Are you kidding me? She was part of casting for the movie. She produced the motherfucking movie. I'm getting a little passionate, huh? She produced the motherfucking movie. She picked the director for the movie. She marries Tom Green from the movie, which people forget. But I remember. Yes. But people also forget that Drew Barrymore also was with this young stud, Luke Wilson, for a while. Elle Woods' husband. Why am I saying it like that? He was in Legally Blonde too. And many other hit films. Doesn't matter. Back to Drew Barrymore. People were very mean to Tom Green about this because they're like, he's a weirdo. He's a silly, goofy family man. Part 11, Drew Barrymore. Wow, we're really doing this, huh? We're really in it. Sometimes I catch myself in these series and I'm like, hey, Tef, shut the fuck up. So her and Tom Green. So Tom Green was a family man, right? She loved that about him because that's all she wanted, was to be part of like a family. And actually being with Tom Green made her reach out and like really reconcile with her mom. So even though the media is extremely harsh with them for no real reason other than they know, sorry, Tom Green, like, Teddy, would you like some sausage? You know what I'm talking about? That movie? Even though they know him as this like weirdo, experimental, comedic guy or whatever, the guy with the tugboat and Charlie's Angels, this relationship, although did not last very long and they divorced pretty quickly, really helped heal a lot of mommy issues for her. Some mommy wounds. So maybe in her life during this time, her personal life, a little messy. But professionally, my girl's fucking killing it. She's on top, all right? Also, the sequel to Charlie's Angels, a lot of people are like, too bad it's not as good as the first. Allegedly. I don't think that's how you use that. I don't care. I love it. Are you fucking kidding me? I love that. Number 2, I love just as much as number 1. I need to grow up. You know what I was going to do. I was going to make a joke. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Demi Moore in bikini? Please. Bill Murray? Please. No, sorry. Bill Murray and Lucy Liu hated each other, so instead it was Bernie Mac, who also... May you rest in power. Also, quickly to discuss this photo. It's an iconic photo for me, and I believe the story to be true. I'm not going to Google beforehand, so you can just correct me. But I believe Drew Barrymore surprised Cameron with a limousine on the way to the premiere for Charlie's Angels, and the limo broke down. So they had to walk, and that's why in some premiere photos you see Cameron with her shoes off. She's like holding her shoesies. You know what? But everything's okay. We got the bottle of Dom. Then Drew comes out with Fever Pitch with Jimmy Fallon, where a guy can't decide between his favorite baseball team, the Boston Red Sox, or his human partner. It was good though. I am now just realizing that I skipped over Riding in Cars with Boys, which is also in an incredible film where she plays a teen mom, and she says that during that movie, like filming that movie, also helped heal a lot of her mommy wounds because she put herself in the character's place about like wanting to be an individual but also like caring for a child. It's so good. It's so good. Drew Barrymore part 12. She starts dating the drummer from The Strokes, who also dated Kristen Wiig, Fabrizia, who is not ugly. They were hot and heavy. There's like a million pictures of them making out. Good for you. Good for you. Very rock and roll. They were on and off for a little bit. She then does like music and lyrics with Hugh Grant. Lucky You with Eric Bana. Is that how you say it? Eric? Not ugly either. Drew Barrymore is now a solid, bankable star that people take seriously. Against every single odd against her. Is that English? Against all odds. Against every odd. She got married. She had 2 children. They broke up. She gets her talk show. Just an absolute slam dunk of a career. Yeah? And I truly admire her. I think she is someone that is very much worth admiring because I think there were many moments in her life where she had the choice not to choose herself. She didn't have a childhood, but I like to think that at one point she chose to lean into a childlike joy and maybe blindly believe that she's capable and that she's talented. And maybe, like children, you kind of have to blindly believe that you're really good at playing dress up and you're really good at playing make-believe and it feels really good and that's good enough for you. And maybe choosing your joy means also choosing a future that you want. You know what I mean? Maybe acknowledging that maybe a good time does not equal the kind of life I want to lead. So I need to let go of some things in order to be the person that I want to be, in order to be seen the way I want to be seen, in order to be heard the way I want to be heard. She took control of her life and her narrative, and she followed her joy. And I really admire her because following your joy is really, really brave. I know a lot of people that are too scared to choose joy, and I really admire her Truly. I think she's worth admiring. And you gotta watch Ever After. If you're watching this and you're like, never heard of it, no, put it on. Wait, okay, also, before I go, I just want to say that Drew Barrymore is like a testament to the power of forgiveness. And that also takes a lot of courage, a lot of bravery. So, okay, now for real, now you really gotta watch Ever After. So I said this yesterday. Everyone knows my favorite thing is when I feel sick. I tell people I look like E.T. face down in the creek. And I started getting comments saying, Tefi, when you Google E.T. face down in the creek, your face pops up. And I said, that's impossible. I'm a good person. Baby Jesus would never do that to me. He would never do that to me. So I gave it a Google. It is me. It is me. Because I made it part of my Instagram caption. So now when people are looking for this, they're gonna get me. Please respect my privacy at this time.
Introduce you to a very special young lady who's very active in the fight against drugs. I present to you Drew Barrymore.
Today is very complicated. Kids are under a lot of pressure. One of the biggest pressures is the peer pressure to use drugs. I don't know any kid that hasn't had to deal with it, including me.